Happy weekday, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Forgotten Dawgs, where we'll be shining some light onto some NBA players that I think deserve a little bit more love. Today I'm honoring one of my mom's favorite role players, Horace Grant, the Enforcer. Before we even get started on his stats or career, I want to show some appreciation for the style of Horace Grant. I mean, the goggles, the armbands. I mess with it a little bit. But anyways, Horace Grant, he went 10th overall to the Bulls in the 1987 draft, and he was like exactly the rookie you want if you're building a team in your championship window. Now, obviously, when you have Michael Jordan, basically every year is a championship window. He had just come off averaging 37 points and was averaging 35 in that season when Horace came to the Bulls. But Horace Grant came in and automatically just started having an impact on the team. His first year was a typical year for a rookie trying to get their footing, but he picked up very quick after that. In his second year, he went from averaging 7.7 points to 12 points, 5.5 rebounds to 8.6 rebounds, and he got one more assist per game, going from 1.1 to 2.1. He also averaged half a more steal, going from 0.6 to 1.1, and he maintained a solid blocks per game rate at 0.7 or 0.8 a game. But he really started growing into his own in those second, third, fourth years and really established a foundation for him to become a really, really crucial player. Horace Grant might be the least role player that I've talked about so far. Just in the sense that, he was so instrumental for that first three-peat. He came into the league and was immediately a great rebounder and a great presence in the paint, especially a great offensive rebounder. During the first three-peat for the Bulls, Horace had 10.3 win shares in the 90-91 season, 14.1 in the 91-92 season, and 9.1 in the 92-93 season. He was contributing obviously a lot to that Bulls team, but for having such a talented wing core, it was especially important that they had a guy like Horace to be a presence in the middle and be a big guy on that team. That 14.1 was the best win share he had in his entire career, and he had an amazing true shooting percentage run for those 3 years. He had 58% in the 90-91 season, 61.8% true shooting in the 91-92 season, and 53.4% in the 92-93 season. And he was huge on the offensive end. He was huge on the defensive end. During that first three-peat, I can't stress it enough. He was just so crucial to the team's success. And in my opinion, I don't think the first three-peat gets enough love, and understandably so. The personalities of Michael and Dennis Rodman is that's must-see TV, and that's must-see off-the-court TV. But as far as basketball goes, I don't think the first three-peat gets enough love. Rodman's impact was great, and it gets talked about a lot. Rodman was an extremely good fit for that second three-peat team, considering they were a more offensively deep team, and he provided, no doubt, some of the best defensive presence and effort that we've ever seen in the league, especially with his rebounding. So it was okay for him to sacrifice the offensive side of his game to really delve into the defensive side. It was different with Horace. They had a differently constructed team, and they really relied on Mike for his offense. But I think that Horace could have fit on any team in the NBA extremely well. I mean, he just would have made an impact because of his defense and his efficiency. He was just such a good shot alterer. Now, both Dennis Rodman and Horace Grant were both obviously amazing and fit their respective three-peat team very, very, very well. But I think Horace is just more overlooked simply just because he isn't as popular. He's not as much of an entertaining presence. Now, also as far as the playoffs go, Horace was an all-around winning player. He made the playoffs in 13 of his 17 seasons in the league. And real quick, I don't want to let 17 years go untalked about. It's a lengthy career, and he played really well for most of it. And he played some really solid minutes for arguably the best playoff team of all time with the 0-1 Lakers, the team that went 16-0 in the postseason. He also shot his highest free throw percentage of his entire career with that Lakers team. It was 77.5%. And that's crucial, especially being in the older part of his career, not getting as many looks, especially not really being able to use the same movement and force and strength that he had earlier in his career. Getting to the free throw line and being able to hit those shots, that's big for Horace Grant, that's big for the Lakers. Also, in that same season, he had his lowest turnover percentage. And he was one of the older players on that team, and just his value on the court, and I'm sure he provided lots of value off the court, but being 35 and being able to perform that well for a team that had such success, it's very impressive. Now, just talking about Horace and no teams that he played with, he had a decade of his career from 88 to 98, where he was exceptional. Like the kind of guy that you want on your team no matter what. The thing is, it's hard to say he was better in 1 year than he was in any of the other years of his prime, even though he made the All-Star team only once. He was an All-Star in the 93-94 season, averaging 15.1 points, 11 rebounds, the most of his career, and 3.4 assists. So passing big man. He also, in that stretch of his prime, made the all-defensive second team 4 years in a row, from 93 to 97, and he also was considered in the Defensive Player of the Year race 3 of those years in his prime as well. But even though his All-Star year was his best year statistically, his efficiency and his defensive impact was so good in the other years. If you just look at his basketball reference page, you'll be able to see it, that it's hard to say that the 2 extra points and the 2 extra rebounds and the 2 extra assists that he had made that season better than his other seasons. He was just so reliable on both sides of the floor for that entire decade, and he still goes down as one of the more underlooked players in NBA history. Also, his steals and blocks. Like, I've been talking a lot about his defensive side. I haven't really given stats. His steals and blocks, exactly what you want for a competing team. The most blocks he averaged in a season was the 91-92 season when he was still playing with the Bulls, and he had 1.7 blocks a game and 1.2 steals a game. His highest steal count per game was in the 96-97 season when he was with Orlando, and that was 1.5 steals per game. He averaged 0.9 or more than a steal in 11 of the 17 years that he was in the league, and averaged 0.9 or more blocks 10 years of the 17 years that he was in the league. Like, just talk about defensive impact. And I wish that they had more stats for the earlier seasons in his career, because on his basketball reference page, if you look at his advanced stats and other things like that, they start in the 96-97 season, obviously a little past his heyday. In the 2000-2001 season that I was talking about, he was a plus 7.3 when he was on the floor. He played some extremely valuable minutes for especially the Bulls. Not saying that he wasn't as good on the Magic. He was still great on the Magic, but because of how good those Bulls teams were, it's hard to talk about the Magic in a way that makes them like a consistent threat when you are playing against Michael Jordan. No disrespect to Dennis Scott and Nick Anderson and all those great guys on that team. It's Michael Jordan. Now, his career highs for any given game were 31 points, 23 rebounds, 10 assists, 5 steals, and 7 blocks. Now, all of those stats separately are really impressive. But when you take into account that on the night that he scored 31 points, he also had 15 boards and 4 blocks against Boston in 1993, that's good. That year after Mike retired, the 93-94 season, I believe it was, Horace Grant just took it to a whole nother level. Like, he had more room to step it up offensively, and he did. It's really impressive when you look at his career and his stats, because you never really hear about this stuff, but he was just a really, really solid player in a really solid decade of the NBA too. The fact that he's still recognized, it's for good reason. As far as getting recognized by the league with awards and stuff, he was recognized as a great defensive player, but his offensive game was just extremely underrated. Sorry to switch it up on you and to go into the phone cam, but the camera that I was using just died and I don't have another battery right now, so we're gonna finish the video up on here. But we've seen it time and time again. Guys like that who don't have exactly the most out there presence tend to be left behind a little bit. But in my opinion, I think Horace Grant deserves a whole lot of love and a whole lot more attention than he gets. That was basically all I had to say. Thank you guys for checking out this episode. I will be back next week. I think that makes sense for when you would be watching this. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.